in. We're going to turn to Congressman Buddy Carter, Republican of Georgia, member of the House Budget Committee, joining us via Zoom this morning. Congressman, good morning to you. Let's talk about the budget and government funding. We are less than 10 days from that November 17th government funding deadline. Are you expecting another one of these shutdown showdowns, or is there a way to avoid it?
Well, there is a way to avoid it. Of course, if we can pass the CR, and we're discussing that now, whether it be, there's really two proposals out there. One is referred to as a ladder. That is, we've already passed 7 appropriation bills, so we got them ready to go. So why can't we go ahead and negotiate with the Senate and get some of these bills passed and then have a continuing resolution for everything else? That kind of makes sense to me. You could extend it for the bills that we haven't had a chance to pass yet, and we haven't had a chance to work with the Senate and compromise and conference on yet, and go ahead and have those take effect that we have already passed, but have a CR for everything else. That's one proposal. The other proposal is just a clean CR, just to get us through, whether it be December 15th or whether it be January, sometime in January. There's been discussion about January 22nd. There's even been discussion about going out as far as April 15th. So we'll see, but I'm confident that everyone wants to avoid a shutdown. A shutdown is not good. We all understand that. But let's keep in mind, a shutdown is not the worst thing that could happen. The worst thing that could happen would be for us to continue the reckless spending of the federal government that has led to us being almost $34 trillion in debt, that has led to us spending more on the interest on our debt than we're going to be spending on defense, which is the number one responsibility of our government to protect our citizens. That is inexcusable.
I should note a CR, congressional shorthand for a continuing resolution. CR in October is what got us to this November 17th deadline. So you describe a couple options. At what point, and again, we're less than 10 days from November 17th, at what point does the Republican conference say which option they're going to back here? When do you come together on one of those?
We're going to have to do that next week. We're going to have to make that decision next week. Obviously, the 17th is Friday, Friday week, and we've got to have something done by then. Otherwise, the government shuts down. Again, really, no one wants that. That's not a good situation, but that's what we're faced with right now. So I'm very confident, again, that we'll get something done that'll carry us through to allow us the time that we need to finish these appropriation bills. I'm very proud of what we've done thus far. I was disappointed we didn't get THUD last night. It was pulled, but hopefully we'll get back to it today. Hopefully we'll get financial services done. If we can get those two done, then we've got 9 out of 12 of the bills done in the House. And over 83% of the discretionary spending will have been taken care of. So, that's pretty good. It's not 100%, which is what we've got to get to, but it is close.
Why did Transportation and Housing and Urban Development, why did that funding bill get pulled last night?
Well, one of the things you have to keep in mind is that, we're under regular order now. So we're allowing amendments to be offered. And oftentimes, many members really don't commit until they find out what amendments are going to be in or what amendments are going to be left out. So that has an impact on some of these bills. Whether that was the case last night or not, I don't know. I wasn't privy to that information, but I do know it was pulled at the last minute. My hope, again, is that we will get back to it, whether it be this week or whether we push it into next week. I do hope we can get financial services done today and tomorrow, and that we will have at least 8 bills done if we can get financial services done.
And then, Congressman, staying with your budget committee expertise, outside of the regular appropriations process and these bills we've been talking about, it's the emergency funding bills. The House passed their Israel support bill last week. Speaker Johnson has talked about a Ukrainian support bill, tying funding for that with more border security. What happens with that bill? What's your expectation?
Well, there's a lot of angst right now within our conference about Ukraine funding, and it's not that we don't support Ukraine. We do. We get it. We understand how important this is. We understand the role of the United States and as leader in democracy in the world, that we can ill afford to let Putin win. We all get that, but there are some things that we'd like to see with the Ukraine funding. One is that we would like to see Europe do more of humanitarian aid. We are okay, I think, for the most part, sending weapons to Ukraine for them to fight, but the humanitarian aid really should be handled by Europe, and they are doing a pretty good job with that now. Secondly, we of course don't want to see any American boots on the ground, any American troops in Ukraine. But thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, I think what we really want to see is a plan. How is this going to end? How are we going? What's the light at the end of the tunnel here for Ukraine? That's what I hear a lot of my constituents saying back home, and that's what I'll hear a lot of my colleagues saying. Now, tying it in with the border, there are some pros and cons to that. Many of our members, that's the number one issue for us is securing our border. We understand how important that is to the American people. But again, there are members of our conference who feel like that should be separated from Ukraine funding. I think the idea here is to tie them together, and it would give us a better chance of passing the Ukraine funding. There may be some truth to that.
And then a final minute here, Congressman, on the Israel aid bill. If that bill is dead on arrival in the Senate, as Senate Democrats have said it would be because of how it's funded with cuts to the IRS, what happens here? Are there other options to move aid to Israel?
Well, first of all, I am sick and tired of making decisions over here in the House based on what the Senate may or may not do. The Senate can go pound sand as far as I'm concerned with that. What we showed was fiscal responsibility. We are not going to continue to spend taxpayers' money that we don't have and build up this debt that is the greatest threat to our country of anything else. And, if the Senate decides they don't want to pass that bill, then show us what you want to do. And then let's go conference and let's try to work out something. But we have to stand with Israel, and we need to get them the funds as soon as possible.
Congressman Buddy Carter, member of the Budget Committee, Republican of Georgia, and do always appreciate your time. Thanks for chatting with us on the Washington Journal.
Thank you.
Back to your phone call.